it's Jamie from Guildbrook Farm, and today I'm going to take you along with me as I can green beans. Alright guys, to get started, the first thing you're going to need is some fresh green beans. The fresher the better. I just picked mine. I have two different types here. We're going to blend them together in one jar. You're going to need a pressure canner. We are not doing any kind of pickled green beans. We're just doing plain old green beans. So for that, it's a low acid recipe. You're going to need a pressure canner. Now, if you're not sure if you're supposed to use a water bath canner or a pressure canner, you need to consult a recipe. And the one website that I always go to is the National Center for Home Food Preservation. We'll leave that link down in the description. And you can see that we will need a pressure canner for a green bean recipe. I have the All-American 921. Love this canner. I do use it on a glass cooktop. I get a lot of questions about that. No issues. We're very careful with it. But you definitely need to check with your manufacturer if you want to do that. We're going to need some hot boiling water, which I already have on here. You're going to need your jars. It doesn't matter if they're wide mouth or not. I prefer wide mouth for green beans. It's just easier to get them in the jar and get them out of the jar. You're going to need your lids, rings, bubble remover tool. I can never say that. Bubble remover tool. And then some non-iodized salt if you want to add salt to your recipe. Very first thing we're going to do is wash up our green beans. Alright, so the recipe that we're going to use today you can find on the National Center for Home Food Preservation website. I'm going to leave that link down below. You're just going to go to How Do I Can, Canning Vegetables and Vegetable Products. We're going to go down to Beans, Snap, and Italian. And then you can see here the different instructions for canning hot pack or raw pack. We're going to use raw pack. I prefer to use raw pack just because I don't want to overcook my vegetables. And then down below that you can see there are two different types of pressure canners. The top one is for a dial gauge pressure canner, and then the bottom one is for a weighted gauge pressure canner. For the All-American, we follow the instructions for the weighted gauge pressure canner. Now you're going to have to follow the correct ones for your pressure canner. Down here you can see that it has instructions for both hot and raw. We're going to be canning pints. Our process time is going to be 20 minutes, and for our altitude it's going to be between 0 and 1,000 feet, and that's 10 pounds of pressure. You're going to want to make sure that you pick through your green beans and pull out any ones that might be damaged from bugs or anything. If you want, you can put in a splash of apple cider vinegar to help clean them up a little bit. Alright, now we're just going to trim up our ends. You might want to have a little compost bin handy. And then I'm just going to chop these into bite-sized pieces and pack them in my jar. Now I'm doing a raw pack on these vegetables. You can also do a hot pack on these vegetables where you pre-cook them for about 5 minutes. I don't like to do that with raw vegetables because I think it tends to overcook them and make them soggy. So I always do a raw pack on vegetables when that is an option. Now you're going to want to pack these in tight, and you're going to want to leave a 1-inch headspace. The 1-inch headspace mark is usually this bottom ring. But if you don't know that, you can use this tool which has the 1 inch on it to measure. And you want to pack this in as tight as you can, especially since we're raw packing these. If you were pre-cooking them, they would shrink up a bit. But since we're not pre-cooking them, they'll shrink up while cooking, which means you want to pack them in tight. Now, some people are going to ask why I'm not snapping my beans, because you can actually just take them and snap them. I just find this is a lot quicker. A lot of people are going to ask also why I'm cutting both ends off. And I find it just quicker to grab a handful and just line them up like this rather than sorting out which end's which and cutting them all off. It's just faster for me, and then the animals will be able to eat those pieces. Bad one. Alright, looks like we have 6 pint jars. Now if you want, you can add salt. It's 1 teaspoon of salt per pint. And now we're just going to fill our jars up with boiling water up to the 1-inch mark. Now we're just going to use our bubble remover tool and go around the inside. This removes any bubbles and also helps pack down some of the vegetables. And you may need to top off with some more water. Now we're just going to take a wet rag and go around the rim of all the jars. This removes any salt or debris, so it ensures that the lids seal. And then we put our lids on. And our rings, finger tight. Okay, now we're going to put this in our pressure canner. This particular pressure canner requires 2 inches of water. So we put hot water in, and then we'll put our jars in. Now for this canner, we're going to go around the inside rim with some olive oil. This prevents the lid from sticking. You can see I don't have very many green beans. I'm only doing a single rack today, so I don't need to put my separator in. I do not need to fill it up with more jars. We're just going to put our lid on. Just line up the arrow with the notch. Turn it to lock it. Using the opposite toggle, so you're going to tighten it down finger tight. Now I'm going to turn my burner on 8, and we're going to wait until this starts venting. Alright, this has been heating up for a while, and right now our pressure canner is venting. You can feel the steam coming out. We're going to let this vent for 10 minutes. Alright, so our canner has been venting for 10 minutes. Now we're going to put the weight on. And we're going to put it on the number 10 because that's what we use for our altitude. And now we're just going to wait until this comes up to 10 pounds of pressure. And this starts rattling, and it should be rattling about 4 times a minute. But we're going to look at the visual gauge here to see when it comes up to 10 pounds of pressure. That's when we're going to start our timer. Alright, you can see that our weight is starting to rattle. Our temperature is above 10. Now we're just going to monitor our gauge to make sure that it doesn't climb too high and it doesn't drop below 10. Usually you have to adjust your temperature a little bit for the first 15 minutes until it stabilizes. I just turned mine down to 6. I'll probably end up having to turn it down to 4 or 5 as well until it stabilizes. But again, you just want to keep watching it for the next 15-20 minutes or so. Make sure it doesn't get too high or drop too low. Now we're going to set our timer for the 20 minutes that the recipe calls for. Alright, it's been 20 minutes. We're going to turn our timer off, and all we do is turn our heat off. We're just going to leave this alone, don't touch anything. We're going to wait for this pressure to drop all the way down to 0 before we do anything else. Alright, our pressure went down to 0. Now we're going to remove our weight, and we're going to set our timer for another 10 minutes. Yeah. Alright, we let it vent for 10 minutes, and now our green beans are ready to take out, but first we're going to cover our countertop with some sort of cloth. And then we're going to take off the lid using the opposite toggle, same way as we put it on. Just make sure you open it away from you so you don't get steam burnt. And now we're just going to take each one of these out. That's it, green beans are done. We're just gonna let them sit on our countertop here for up to 24 hours or until all the jars seal. And we'll know that because they're gonna be, the lids will be indented. Then we're gonna remove the rings, wipe them down to get any sediment off or any food off from the outside of the jars. That way bugs aren't attracted to any of the juices or anything. Then we're gonna write on the lid what they are, so green beans and the date, which is 7/17. And then now we're gonna store these in our basement pantry for, they're gonna be good. I get this question all the time. How long are the jars good for? They're good for a minimum of a year. As long as they're sealed though, I would eat them 5-10 years from now, as long as they remain sealed and they don't smell funny or anything. They're gonna be good to go. So quick Q&A. Some of you guys who haven't watched my previous Canning 101 video, you'll know that I did not sterilize my jars. You do not need to sterilize your jars as long as you are pressure cooking or water bath canning for a minimum of 10 minutes. They do need to be clean though. Another thing is lids. I do not simmer my lids. It is manufacturer recommended that you simmer the lids to soften the rubber up on the lid. I do not do this and I've never had a problem with them sealing. And then the last Q&A is that I tend to reuse a lot of my lids. It's not recommended that you do that, but I do that. As long as they seal, I have no problem with reusing lids, and I'll use them 3-4 times. They're pinging, as long as they seal. So I hope it's been helpful, you guys. Super easy to can green beans. If you guys have any tips or tricks yourself, leave those down below. And if you have any questions for me, I'm by no means the expert on canning, but leave those down below. I'll try and answer your questions as best I can. Hope this has been helpful to you guys. If you like this kind of stuff, like, subscribe. We have canning and cooking videos every Tuesday, and we'll see you in tomorrow's video. Thanks for watching.